Welcome to a new episode of Date Like a French Woman, the podcast to help you practice holistic conscious dating so that you can be fully empowered and repair the Mr. Wrongs while leaving space to attract the love that you really want in your life. Today, I have a guest that will help you with closing any chapter in your life that was kind of difficult, those kicks in the buttocks from the universe, and transition in an empowered way so you can start on a solid foundation for your future. Her name is Maria Tomas Keegan, and I hope I'm not butchering the second portion of that name. We'll confirm. Maria helps women find the courage to rediscover who they are now after experiencing major life changes that rock their world. It might be a divorce, loss of a loved one, caregiving for a parent or a spouse, or an upheaval in their career. It could be several of these which have piled up over time. So good morning, Maria. I'm so glad to have you here today. How are you?
I'm well, Maria. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. To start with, I'm sure usually it's the case, people launch a career like yours because they went through difficult times. And I would love if you could tell us your story a little bit and how you ended up helping women the way you are doing today.
Well, it's a long story, so I'll try to make this short. I have been in a corporate career for 30 plus years. And during that career, so I'm going to answer your first question first. How did I get into this? Being a life transition coach for women. In my corporate career, I had the privilege of coaching and mentoring lots of people, mostly women, in both career choices and challenges, as well as life choices and challenges. And I loved doing that. It was not my job. It was something I got involved in both formally in a mentoring program. IBM was my last corporate gig. And so I did it both formally and informally. And I loved it. I got a real swift kick in the butt a few years ago when IBM no longer saw the need to keep my team intact, and they laid us all off. And that was unexpected, pretty devastating to me, and I just didn't know what I was going to do next until a friend called me asking how I was doing, and she said to me, after I went through this litany of all the things I was worried about, she said to me, Maria, what if it was your idea? Mm. And that just turned it around for me. It changed my perspective instantly. I have used that and been grateful to her every time I have with my clients, because it's a great what if question.
Yeah.
Right? What if it was your idea to get laid off or to leave IBM after almost 20 years? What would you do then? And that just shifted the power for me. And I realize that that is what happened for me throughout my life as I experienced 2 divorces, the loss of loved ones, too many to count, including, my parents and just recently 2 of my 3 brothers. And I realized that I have a choice in how I respond to anything that happens in my life, whether it is expected or unexpected. So, understanding what that choice, that I have a choice, and that I can very consciously think about what I value most in any particular situation, honor the values, and make my choice from there is a very empowering thing to do. I learned that early on in my life, thanks to my mother and her wisdom. And I have been able to use that tool many times in my life. So what I love to do now is help women recognize their power by choice.
So you used a very powerful way of asking what if. It's extremely powerful. My way of doing that is saying that whether things happen for a reason or not, we can make them happen for a reason. And so I suspect you did that with yourself. It took you some time. And what was the idea or the germination of the idea that made you decide to go and help other women with what you just went through?
Well, after I was laid off, I did a lot of soul searching, and I landed on the idea that what I loved most about what I did in my 30 plus year career was to help others, become their best selves, to navigate the choppy waters sometimes of life, and figure out what it is they really wanted to do, and helped them find the courage to take the step that leads them in that direction. So when I realized that that's really what I love to do, I decided to go back to school and get my certification credentials for to be a life coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did some more soul searching about what do I want to coach about. And that's when I started thinking about my life and all the transitions that I've been through and the lessons I've learned. I thought I could help women do it easier than I did at first.
Yeah. And that's so, I mean, when you go through something like that, you fully understand what people feel. So that's really that makes you a powerful coach, even more powerful than anyone else who wouldn't have gone through that kind of experiences.
Right.
When you first start talking to women, what do you find is the most common block that is on their way of achieving more empowerment and seeing things differently? Is it a thought? Is it something practical maybe?
Well, of course, it's different for everyone, but because everyone has unique experiences in their life that cause them to respond in certain ways. But I think one of the common blocks might be just not knowing. It's probably stems from confusion or fear, but not knowing what next step to take. I just don't know what to do. I was talking with a client yesterday, and she just said to me, I just don't know what to do. And she's stuck. She's just stuck where she is because there are so many possibilities. And she's a doer. So she thinks to be in motion all of the time. And what I like to suggest is that they stop for a minute, allowing themselves quiet time to just think.
Yes.
To feel, to consider, to just breathe, to go do something that they just love to do, whether it's walking by a lake or taking a bubble bath. In those quiet times, our subconscious works in our favor,
Yeah.
and things just come to us. And allowing that to happen rather than forcing it, I think is
Yes.
very important.
Once we relax, we can access the inner wisdom. And so then you're the piece who maybe in the puzzle can tell them, trust that. I'm sure it helps them to have you, because we don't see ourselves. We are get stuck in our own ways. And when you have someone in front to mirror you or to bring some light where it needs to go, it helps you trust. Do you find that trust part, trusting what arises, is also something very common that people have a hard time embracing?
Believing in themselves and trusting their instinct, their intuition, their gut, whatever we call it for ourselves, is very important. And it is something that can get us stuck, because as women, often we're taught to be there for everyone else, right?
Yeah.
To take care of everyone else first. And that we are, it's not that we're not important, but we're not as important.
Yes.
So we compromise. We compromise our values. We compromise to keep the peace.
Yes.
We compromise just so everyone else is happy. And we give up a lot of who we are.
Yeah.
And we learn not to trust ourselves, right? It's just a conditioning.
Yes.
Over time, we condition ourselves to compromise. We condition ourselves to compromise. Yeah, and that's a difficult one. So trusting is something, it's a learnable or relearnable trait.
Yes.
That I think takes practice. And I love the metaphor you just used of mirroring, because I see myself as a mirror for my clients, so that they see how important they are and how far they've come already, and to be proud of themselves. I was speaking to another client the other day, and she was telling me how proud she was of her daughter and how far her daughter had come. And she's a single mom. And I said to her, do you hear yourself? Do you hear how you should be turning a lot of that on yourself? Be proud of yourself, because your daughter is who she is in large part because of all that you've given her. And she stopped for a second and thought, wow, you're so right. So that mirror it's really important for us, so that we truly see ourselves in all of the goodness and the brilliance that we are.
Yes.
So we can move forward much easier in that state.
And what I find too is you help them, you give them permission to see their magnificence, because and it's even more prevalent in French culture, I think. It's here too, because it's not okay to say how great you are. It's taken as bragging. And you need to be humble, you need to tone it down. And last time I was listening to a French program, actually, and the guy said, well, I don't think I'm such a good person or such an exceptional person. And the host of the program said, oh, that's so great that you say that. I like you even so much better. And I was shocked, because we are encouraged to keep ourselves small and not see our magnificence. It's really a pity. It's a pity, because it can be not arrogant, but when you acknowledge your beauty, your magnificence, you can see the one in others.
Yeah. You're right. Again, it's conditioning, right?
Yes.
We've been conditioned to hold ourselves back, to not outshine others.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And wouldn't it be lovely if we could all just shine,
Yes.
and not judge anyone else
Yeah.
for shining as well.
Yeah.
So I think, a very good friend of mine has a tagline that I just love, and it's no judgment, just love.
Yeah.
And I just love that concept. If we could just all be less judgmental of ourselves as well as of everyone else around us, and it leaves so much more room for us to be free to love, free to accept, free to be ourselves and allow others to be who they are.
Yeah. I'm convinced that it's somehow the key to world peace, loving ourselves. Because when you love yourself, you just want to help, you just want to give. You're not in judgment anymore. What if somebody was coming to you, or for the audience, who sometimes they go through a hard time, especially in relationships, and they don't trust themselves anymore because they have been not discerning enough? We all have made mistakes. What would be the beginning of, or a practice that you could give them to start trusting themselves if they wanted to start somewhere on that road?
I think this trust idea stems from being fully committed and grounded in our values. So one of the exercises I love to do with clients, it's one of the very first ones I do, is have them get in touch with what they value most. Now, I go through a list of, in my workshop, I go through a list of 30 values, and I ask them to pick their top 20, then their top 10, and then their top 5. So in that process of elimination, they really can get down to what really grounds them, and what can they honor in every decision or choice that they make. So when they have a decision or a choice to make, and they bump that up against their value of integrity, for instance, and they feel that they can make this decision and say yes because it honors their value of integrity, in that they can trust that decision. They can trust themselves, and they can trust that they are in integrity with their value.
Yes. Because it helps them. So many of us, most people, before they start really working with maybe a coach or some kind of self-development tools, they don't even know who they are. They don't know what they value, what they want to stay away from. And I'm sorry, I'm just congested today. And it's such a great tool because you can make your decisions in sync with who you really are.
Right.
So it's solid. It's a foundation. You can step on that. It's such a great advice. So that's where people should start, really.
I believe so. I believe that's where trusting themselves starts. I truly believe that on a foundation of, I call this, I have a three-legged stool. And on a three-legged stool, I believe it creates the firm foundation from which you cannot topple. So there are 3 legs. One leg is values. It is the first. The second one is vision. And the third one is passionate action. So if you have those 3 things for your foundation, you can trust everything you do.
Yeah. And you're no longer vulnerable to the outside world stepping in and dictating what you should do or what value you should have. It's a big problem.
Yeah, and the world will always jump in. There will always be something that will distract us from our path. And that's just life. That's what happens. But with a foundation, we always have something to go back to. So we may get distracted. We may go off path just
Yeah.
for a moment or a week. It doesn't, as long as we have that firm foundation, that three-legged stool to come back to, those values and that vision, and the desire to take action toward that, then I think that's a recipe for success.
Yes.
Regardless of how many transitions and life-changing events may happen to us along the way.
Because it's like having a pole where you can hang on even if the water becomes stormy.
Yeah.
I know values when I work with people on relationships and compatibility. It's a huge thing because you may be attracted by someone, but if you don't value, somehow, if you don't have values, at least the ones that are the top 3 for you in common, it's going to make things so much more difficult. I know I'm a family person. I want somebody who's family oriented.
Yeah.
It's really applicable to any area of your life.
Right.
How long does it take? I know it may vary from person to person and case by case, but what is the minimum length of time that you think somebody who's going through something very difficult should work like this with a coach to expect some kind of significant results?
You know, you're so right. It so depends on the person, their situation, and their desire.
Mm-hmm.
So I find the length of time is attached to their level of desire to make the change.
Yeah.
So if they're stumbling through it and they're getting stuck, every step of the way, maybe their desire to change is not quite as strong as they wanted it to be or thought it was. So I do think those two are attached. But if there is desire, I have worked with women in the course of 3 months' time, and they've made remarkable transformation. And then, others have taken 6 months.
Yes.
What I like to ensure them, or that they are doing, is that they are learning new life strategies that they can adapt to their own situation, and then implement so that they are practicing the new strategy. And eventually that will become a habit, and they've integrated it into their lives.
Yeah.
So that takes time.
It does.
So I don't want anyone to think that this is something, this is not a weekend kind of deal. It's not, it's truly life-changing. And if we are in situations where we are so stuck and we need to change, then we should be willing to make the commitment of time and energy that it takes to make that kind of transformation.
And I really wanted to ask you that because I have people sometimes coming to me. We're in a society where everything is like, take the magic pill. And people expect to change overnight and to never go back to their old stuff. When in fact, and you're going to confirm if it's true for you too, I see clients who go through something a first round and they change. But then they're going to revisit the same kind of issue at another level sometimes to make even deeper changes and really let go of anything that needed to go, that was still there. Do you find that too in your coaching?
Absolutely. And I find it in my coaching, and I find it in my own experience.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So the more things, I'm actually writing a book right now, and I just was inspired this morning to start writing a chapter on my experience with grief. So what was coming out of that writing for me was going back to the very first time I lost a significant person in my life,
Yeah.
when I was in my teens. And then what was the next one? And then, the loss of my mother, who was my best friend, and what I learned from that and what that prepared me for, and how each one of those experiences prepared me. Not that you can ever be prepared
No.
for the loss of someone, especially suddenly, but it did prepare me for the experience, the process of grief to be easier for me, because I knew what I was going to go through.
Yeah.
I knew there was going to be a hole in my heart.
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to take a while for that to go away. And I knew that there were things I could do to make me feel closer to the person I lost that were very comforting to me.
Yeah.
So I think as we experience those things, that we learn, we go deeper, we understand ourselves better. And I have to find another way of saying this, but they're tools in a toolbox,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we
Yeah.
get to pull those tools out when we need them, so long as we are aware
Yeah.
that the time has come for us to take another tool out.
Yeah. And actually grief is not only when you lose a person, it can happen when anything that is ending will create that. And people don't
a divorce will create that. Yeah. The
People
loss
don't
of a long career can create
yes.
that. Yes.
And what
Absolutely.
I find is that when you give yourself the time to really process every stage of the grief, which I'm sure you work also with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
I found it in my life, privately, personally, very useful, because I knew I expected to be at a certain time in sadness and anger. And so you can process those emotions and let them go instead of just repress them, and they're going to create more chaos for you down the road.
Right.
It's extremely important. If somebody wanted to get more information or maybe talk to you, where would they go? What's a good way to contact you?
Oh, thank you. So probably the best way, there are a couple of things going on right now that might be of interest to your listeners. But my company name is Transition and Thrive with Maria. So my website is www.transitionandthrivewithmaria.com. Not surprisingly. on my website, there is a free download of a book.
Okay.
Called Even Successful Women Can Get Derailed When Life Happens. And there's a new virtual workshop that I'm just launching. I have done one here in Phoenix in person, a 1-day workshop, and I'm creating the virtual version of that. I'm launching it on February 17th. And you can see a link for that on my website as well.
So it's perfect timing for us to do that now.
Yeah.
If you had one last parting advice that you wanted to share with people before we leave them, what would it be?
Be patient.
Oh, great one.
Be patient with yourself. We ask so much of ourselves. We expect so much of ourselves, and we often expect so much of others, that I think my best advice is just to be more patient with yourself and with those you love around you and who are in your life.
Yeah.
At work, at home, at play, and relax a little bit. And life is very short, and I am inspired these days to find the joy.
Yes.
So I would like you to find the joy.
And actually, that reminds me that I didn't ask you my 2 favorite questions. So we're going to do that before we leave.
Okay.
So many people here, you have to love yourself, but they don't know where to start with self-love. And everyone has his own definition of it. So what is your definition of self-love?
Well, as you might imagine, I've talked about this a lot. It has a lot to do with honoring my values.
Yeah.
So making sure that I am making all my choices and decisions based on that. Showing up authentically is another way for me just to be myself, is just because for so many years in my corporate career, I wasn't. I felt like I was someone in my career and I was someone else in my personal life.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure out that I can be me in both places. And the last thing goes along with the being patient. It's being gentle and kind with myself.
And so that's one of your practices, to be gentle and kind with yourself, because we have practices that we go to on a regular basis. Perfect. That's beautiful. And I know everyone needs patience. And that's probably something that a lot of us have to learn more.
Yeah, it's a practice. It really is a practice.
Yes. So thank you for that. I'm really honored that you were here today with us.
Thank you.
That was a great interview. You gave us great tools for people to start. And for our listeners, you can go check Maria on her website and go check her virtual workshop that's coming very soon.
Yeah.
So thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much.
Until I see you again, our dear listeners and viewers, I wish you a week full of love, blessings, and patience. Bye. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. And for questions, information, or to book a free 30-minute introductory coaching session, please visit datelikeafrenchwoman.com.